Hare Krishna. Question from Amoglila Prabhu. How do we deal with students who take up Krishna consciousness as an excuse to avoid their duty of studying? In general, the relatives and acquaintances of students also discourage them from practice Krishna consciousness, saying that it will affect their studies, and we want them to practice Krishna consciousness seriously also, but they often take it up as an escape way from their studies. So how do we deal with this? Answer: firstly, there has to be philosophical clear understanding, and then there is practical arrangements to translate that philosophy into action. So philosophically, Krishna is very clear in the Bhagavad Gita 18.8, where he says that Dukkham ityeva yat karma kaya klesha bhayat tyajit sakrutva rajasam tyagam naiva tyaga phalam labhet. That Dukkham ityeva yat karma, when somebody thinks that this work is going to give a lot of dukkha, a lot of trouble, kaya klesha bhayat tyajit, and therefore tyajit, one gives the work because of kaya klesha bhayat, because of the fear that it will cause pain to the body. Kaya klesha bhayat tyajit. And sakrutva rajasam tyagam, Krishna says that such tyaga, such renunciation is in the mode of passion, and naiva tyaga phalam labhet, and this will not lead to the fruit of tyaga. So generally, tyaga, renunciation, is not thought to be in the mode of passion. We think of renunciation in the to be a very good thing, to be either spiritual or in the mode of goodness, but Krishna is talking about renunciation in the mode of passion, because what determines the mode in which a particular action is done is not just the action per se, but its motivation. So if the motivation for renunciation is simply based on material calculations, what will give me pleasure to my body and what will cause pain to my body, so then that is essentially bodily consciousness, and bodily consciousness is the characteristic of the mode of passion. So actually speaking, when the renunciation is motivated by a desire to avoid bodily pain, then that is renunciation in the mode of passion. And Krishna says over here, naiva tyaga phalam labhet. So now renunciation itself is not the goal. It has to lead to some further goal. What is that further goal? Tyaga phala. What is the phala of tyaga? Actually, that is jnana, and ultimately it is bhakti. Now we need to, by giving up activities, the purpose is not just to give up activity. The purpose is actually realization of the futility of material existence, and that is jnana, and further the realization of the glory of bhakti, where one actually devotes oneself to Krishna wholeheartedly and even works hard for the sake of Krishna. In 9.14, Krishna says that Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhrudhavrataha namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. So here the important point is dhrudhavrataha, the devotees are constantly glorifying Krishna, and yatantascha, they endeavor with great determination to glorify Krishna. Yatanta is endeavor, Dhrudhavrata is great determination. So now, when is endeavor, determination, and vows to keep up determination, vrataha, all these are required? When actually there is some difficulty, there is some opposition in doing things, then we need all these things. We need to endeavor, we need to be determined, we need to take vows. So this indicates that devotees don't run away from obstacles. They take up challenges for the sake of service of Krishna. So philosophically, renunciation in the mode of passion will not lead to any deep knowledge or spiritual realization, nor will it lead to increased devotion. So that means then people are just acting in the mode of passion, taking a mask or a garb of devotion to cover that passion. And this sort of activity may not be intentionally done by people, by students especially. They may just find their studies unpalatable. Now that is quite possible because the environment is competitive today, and even also that the students are often forced to take up careers in which they don't really have much interest. They are, certain careers are glamorized and students feel that they are not compatible with that career. But apart from all this also, there is the normal tendency of the human mind to take the path of least resistance. So studies seems like hard work, whereas bhakti seems like chanting, dancing and taking prasadam. This seems to be like the very easy, it seems to be like the path of least resistance. But in general, yes, there are some activities which are easy and joyful in bhakti, but bhakti essentially, for steady growth, it requires sustained commitment. And the devotees who really grow in spiritual life are the devotees who take up responsibility seriously. And those devotees who had an ethos of responsibility in their pre-devotional lives, often those devotees take up serious responsibilities even in their devotional life, and they become very valuable social assets. They become vibrant spiritual leaders. Of course, bhakti is so potent that even if somebody was irresponsible before, that person can also be transformed into becoming responsible by bhakti. But the point is, after becoming a devotee, one has to become responsible. And responsible doesn't mean just about one's spiritual standards, just about doing sadhana, just about doing swadhyaya. But it also means we shouldn't have a fragmented vision of bhakti where we divorce our material life from bhakti. Bhakti incorporates our devotional life. It doesn't fragment or reject our material life. So for a devotee student, proper philosophical understanding when it is given, then the devotee students understand that actually my studies are also a part of my service to Krishna. Swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vindati manava. In the 18th chapter, Krishna says, in that same chapter later, that by your work worship him and by this you will attain perfection. So when we do our duty, actually we are following Krishna's instructions first of all, and we're doing serious studies. Now it doesn't matter what social context we are in. Krishna may be talking about Varnashram in that particular section, but the principle is not limited to Varnashram. The principle of doing one's duty for the sake of the Lord can be applied anywhere, in whether there is Varnashram or not, because Varnashram itself is a material framework and the principle of devotion is spiritual, not dependent on anything material. So even if our studies have got nothing to do with spirituality, but we are put in a socio-cultural situation where studying is our duty, and we do that duty in a mode of devotion to Krishna. And if we are having adequate time for sadhana and we have a clear understanding of the ultimate purpose of life, then our studies will also become a part of our worship of Krishna. Now this is the sort of philosophical clarification needs to be given. And if we now, along with this philosophical education about how bhakti includes studies, then there has to be practical facilitation also. Practical facilitation means devotee students need to be given time for studying. So sometimes those devotee students who do a lot of services are glorified a lot, and that is good if somebody is doing a lot of services. But then those devotees who do a lot of services, it shouldn't happen that they just neglect their career and they are very poor performers in their academics. Then that will actually be anti-preaching, that this is the kind of person you will become if you become a serious devotee. So when we appreciate devotees or offer certain devotee students as models for younger devotee students, it's important that a holistic model be there, that the devotees should be dedicated in their study, dedicated in their services and their spiritual life, as well as in their academic studies. Now not every student can become a top performer, not every student will get top grades or come a topper in the class, but there can be certain measures of quantification. So students should be encouraged to study a particular amount of hours per week, so that at least if that much studies are done, a certain level of performance will come up. Because karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Actually, we do have to do our duty. Mate sangostva karmani, Krishna says in 2.47, do not be attached to not doing your work. So we have a right to do our work, and we have not just a right, but we also have an obligation, a duty to do our work. So that way, by proper facilitation, that means appreciating devotees who study nicely also, and also giving students time to study, not just loading them with so many services that they don't have time to study, and properly guiding them so that they recognize the importance of studies. And studies, apart from the principle of being Bhagavad Arpita Karma, Bhagavad Arpita Karma Yoga, and it can be Bhakti Yoga if our motivation is completely to please Krishna, but even if it is not, then still, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's classification, our studies will be Bhagavad Arpit Karma Yoga. We are doing Karma Yoga, our prescribed duty, but we are doing it, offering it to Krishna. So, philosophically, repeated reminders also need to be given about the importance of studies. Of course, we also need to give reminders of the importance of spiritual life also. So, there can be two extremes. One thinks that I have so much studies to do, I will not practice spiritual life only. The other extreme is to think that I have so much spiritual life to practice that I don't have time for studying. No, yuktaha raviharasya. You have to be regulated, as Krishna says in 6.17 in the Gita. So regulation means that one learns a balance between our spiritual activities and our academic activities. And in general, if most students, if they are in themselves actually concerned about their future, and they don't want to necessarily create a bad future for themselves by escapism. So if they are properly guided, then they will also take up the studies. And if some devotees are really very, some students are escapists, and they have, despite all kind of prodding, they are just not doing their studies, and then they are actually practicing spiritual life as an escape way from doing studies, then we cannot stop anyone from practicing bhakti, but we should definitely not glorify these in any way as role models. So they can also practice bhakti if they want to, but we shouldn't appreciate them, and because then that will become a model and others will become escape ways. So the inclusiveness of the bhakti is such that people who are escapists can also be included in bhakti, but in general their wanting to run away from commitment and hard work will eventually make them want to run away from bhakti also, because bhakti also ultimately requires commitment and hard work. Not all the activities of devotion always seem relishable, especially because when the mind gets affected by the lower modes. So overall, these people, if we don't, such escapists, if we don't glorify them and don't make them as models, then either they will shape up or they will slip out. They will shape up means they will realize that I have to become responsible, and they will become responsible in their spiritual as well as their academic lives, or they will just slip out. They will realize, I thought that the bhakti will be an escape way from spiritual life, from the pressures of studies, but bhakti brings its own pressures also. So better let me leave it. So in that way, when we make sure that there is an ethos of responsibility and commitment and hard work, whether it is in one's practice of spiritual life or it is the practice of one's professional life, academic life, then when the right education is given and practically the right models are appreciated and the facilities are provided for students to do their studies also and do their spiritual life properly in a balance, then this problem of taking up to Krishna consciousness as an escape way from student studies will not become too much. It will be manageable and it will be solvable. Thank you. Hare Krishna.